generations. And now, the power of two restores the one.
We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today's video, wow. We are talking about the latest Hunger Games movie that has come out. It is called, I always mix it up, so The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. It is, based off of the most recent book in the Hunger Games series, so we got that going for it. And of course, there was already the Hunger Games trilogy that came out before, and so we kind of, had this idea. Wait, trying to remember correctly, was the final film a part 1, part 2? Like Mockingjay part 1, part 2?
I believe so.
Maybe it was technically a 4-part series, even though there's 3 books. It was super popular to do it around that time. Even Harry Potter did it. And so we had that established for us. We kind of understood, a bit about, the Hunger Games. But now we have this prequel movie, which my guess will end up being somewhat of a series, whether it's going to be a trilogy or a 4-part, whatever. I don't know, but I think there might be more to come in the future. To give you a little bit of idea of where we're coming from off of these, we've seen all of the Hunger Games. For me, it's been a long time, so I don't remember hardly any of it, to be honest. I remember most of the original and then like nothing from the sequels. I read the original book, but I did not read any of the sequels afterwards. And I have not read this book for this film at all. So what is your background for this so everybody can know?
I have read all of the original books and seen all of the original movies, but I have not read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So I have not read this book.
All right. So as you can see, both of us probably, at least I did, went in very open-minded, didn't really know what to expect, minus the fact that it's probably going to be about the Hunger Games, right? Especially from the previews, we still got the same announcer dude from the originals, being the host. And so there's definitely connections to what's going on in the Hunger Games movies that have already happened. But of course, a lot of it's also different. One of the things that you can tell even from the preview is that even the setting of the Hunger Games is different. Like in the films before, they were kind of like in this very open forest, and there was a boundary, I don't know what to call it, that's, separated them but kept them enclosed in this little area, whereas this one, it was kind of like a gladiator arena. So yeah, there's lots of different things that happen. We're going to go ahead and give you some of our thoughts that don't have spoilers, and then give it a rating, and then we'll go into some spoiler section about the movie. And so I guess I can kind of go first. I would say, again, I had no expectations, I really didn't even know what this movie was supposed to be about, besides the fact that it was a prequel, and I recognized the name Snow, so it was probably going to be more about him than anything. And that is true. The movie is about Snow. It is about, how he, started at the academy and then eventually is starting to make his way up the ladder a little bit, because we know in the other films that he is President Snow. So how does he actually get there? What is his past? Why does he support the Hunger Games? A lot of people, and we even see in the preview for this one, there's so many people that are opposed to the Hunger Games that we see, rebellious actions being made throughout the film, not only in this one, but in the other ones too. And so how does Snow, eventually become part of this crazy government that believes in something like the Hunger Games. So that's kind of what we're getting out of this. Of course, we also get this other character. Was it Lucy Gray? Lucy Gray. Okay, I got that name. Well, you probably should because he says it so many times in the film. I'm just going to call her Lucy because I got tired of him calling her Lucy Gray. Lucy is the person that has been selected for the Hunger Games from District 12 that Snow has to be the mentor of. And so we get that dynamic too between those two characters. I'm going to leave most of the other details for the spoiler section because I don't want to tread too close to spoilers. But that's basically what our focus is, we got Snow being the mentor to this individual from District 12, and then we kind of see what happens from there. And so I would say I liked the film. I thought it was very good. I would say the first hour and a half of it was pretty good. I felt like the first half of the movie was much better than the second half of the movie. I don't want to identify what the first half is versus the second half because that's spoilers. But I will say that there was a certain point in this film where I felt like it slowed down quite a bit. And I started to feel like, maybe they should have ended at this point and then made this other part, maybe like part 2 or a separate film, because the tones didn't quite seem to match. The tempo, I should say, more or less the tone, because the tone is the Hunger Games, they're bad, blah, blah, blah. But the tempo of the film was definitely more upbeat and twists around every turn in the first hour and a half. And then I felt like the second half, it was kind of like just a massive epilogue to the film. And so that's kind of how I feel. I thought, like I said, the first chunk of it I really enjoyed. Second half was all right. There really wasn't any comedy, I would say that. It wasn't like a funny film by any means. I feel like they really set the tone of, there's this bad event that the government supports, and, people oppose it, people are for it, and we get to, be in the thick of this political struggle the whole way through, and they really don't let up, quite honestly. Sarah, what did you think of the film?
So before I get into my thoughts, one thing that I looked up just now, because I heard you mention that you think it might be part of a trilogy or something. There currently are no sequels to this book, or no plans for sequels to this movie either, aside from like the actual original Hunger Game movies, which are technically sequels because this is a prequel. Could there be more? Of course, there always could be more. Money talks, but as of right now, this is looking to be a standalone film.
Man, I'll believe it when I see it. Based on the way the movie ended, I don't think it's going to be a standalone, but we'll talk about that more later.
I feel like this movie was kind of a mess. There were so many missed opportunities to like have little minor tweaks that would have made things make more sense. Like, for example, at some point in the movie, we see somebody get hit, but then there's no blood anywhere, even on anybody's clothes or on the ground or like nothing. And it's like you just hit somebody with like a giant club or a rock or whatever it was, and there's no evidence of any like foul play aside from the person being hurt. Like it just, I don't know if that's because they were trying to keep it PG and keep the amount of blood down or what, but it seemed really kind of weird to show that the way that they did.
This movie was definitely PG-13. The only thing that I would challenge with that is because we didn't rewatch the original Hunger Games, but I can't recall back to say whether or not there was, blood everywhere in the originals either. So I would say if there wasn't any in the past, it wouldn't make sense to do it here either.
And that's fine, but then you can't really show like the attacker after the attack and then show that they're just perfectly clean as if they hadn't just committed a bloody crime. Like it doesn't make sense. It doesn't line up.
It also
And
depends
there's
on.
a handful of other issues like that that I don't really want to get into without too much spoilers. But there's just there's continuity issues there.
Uh, I I don't I don't know how much I would agree with it. Just because let's just think of the logistics here. We're not talking about spoilers, we're just talking logistics. If you stab somebody, there's a chance that you'll get blood on you. I would not say it's a guarantee, but there's a chance. Especially if you stab somebody with something where it's like a spear almost, where there's a bunch of distance between you and the person.
I'm
Like,
referring more to when you're clubbing somebody to the point where they're no longer able to attack you anymore.
I
You gotta
feel
hit somebody pretty hard for them to go down.
I feel like I know what you're talking about, but at the same time, we'll talk about it later. Never mind.
Aside from those issues, because I feel like those are more like editing issues or directing issues because they should have chosen different shots to show afterwards. Uh, there's some really weird pauses during the film to say like part one this, part two this, part three this, and it just seems really unnecessary. I feel like they could have just completely gotten rid of those like middle title screens to separate out the movie into three separate parts and just had it be a fluid movie. Um, the very beginning, which is shown very, very briefly in the trailer, about when he's like a little kid. That part didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. They didn't do a very good job, in my opinion, of showing the time difference between that and when he's a young adult or like a teenager, like he is in my background here, his normal age. And aside from that, I feel like the change in his personality throughout the film didn't really make a whole lot of sense. And I haven't read the book, but to me, I feel like they really relied very heavily on you having read the book to understand his actual decisions. And it's a lot of assumption on the viewer that you know what's going on without them having to show you. And I feel like that's really unfair for the vast majority of the people who are going to be seeing this movie, in my opinion, is people like myself who really enjoyed this book series when they were like a teenager and they enjoyed seeing all the movies. And a lot of us may or may not have read these books. I don't know. I haven't. But the target audience for this film, in my opinion, is those who saw that before. So it's been so many years. Those types of books aren't necessarily targeted to my age group anymore, in my opinion, because it's more of like a young adult slash like teenage range. I feel like they really missed the mark with this film. It had potential, and I don't really like the way that they took it. I think there was a lot of directional error, in my opinion.
That's another thing I would say I respectfully disagree with. Because I feel like they set the tone with the fact that the world they live in is super dog eat dog, and if you're not hunting, you're being hunted kind of a thing. And so I feel like that really establishes where these characters are at in their mind, especially when it comes to who you can trust. But of course, we're going to talk about that more in a little bit. Let's go ahead and give it our ratings without, the spoilers, and then we can jump into spoilers. So, Sarah, I have been starting this off mostly the past couple movies, so it's your turn to go. So, what would you give this movie?
I really wanted to give it a higher rating because coming out of the theater, I was like, oh, that was a pretty good movie. But the more I think about it, the more my heart just sinks. And is it better than the average movie? I almost gotta say no. So I'm going with a 4. I was disappointed.
Wow. Well, we're on the different ends of the spectrum. When I was watching the movie and it was about that halfway mark, I was thinking, wow, this was a really good movie. But like I said, there's definitely about another hour's worth of the film where I just kind of felt like it dragged a little bit. And was it important? Sure. Did it develop some character? Yes. But the tempo was not the same. And so I feel like, going so fast and going with so much plot twists and whatnot, and kind of coming to a halt with all of that, I felt like it kind of hurt it a little bit. So I'll be at an 8 out of 10 for this new installment for the Hunger Games. So for me, I'm going to give it an 8. Sarah gives it a 4. And so we are going to transition to some spoiler section here. So make sure to click away if you don't want any. So probably going to rely on going back and forth between the two of us, although I thought the movie was pretty straightforward. So basically,
The very beginning says 3 years before the first Hunger Games. So that's where we're starting.
right, and it's the war that's going on that they all talk about, oh, since the big war, blah blah blah, and all the other movies, this is the one that they're talking about. And so basically what we see here in this first 5 to 10 minutes is that Snow is very young, probably around 7 or 8 or something like that. And he's with his sister, and they are maneuvering through the streets of a set of war-torn streets, I would say.
I believe they're cousins.
Oh, cousins. Sorry,
I don't think they're siblings.
And they're witnessing some of the tragedies of war. Not only are they're seeing death, but they're also seeing like a random dude that is starving walking up to a dead body, chopping off their leg, and quite possibly going to use it for food later. We see them question, like, why are these people doing this? And they don't really know. But needless to say, they're being exposed to some very adult things at a very young age. And so we also learn that Snow's father was killed or died. I don't remember which one it was.
I think he was killed as part of the war or something like that, which this was really weird too, because Snow as a kid learning about his father's death, he doesn't even look sad or like distraught or angry or nothing.
We don't really.
I'm sure if you told any little kid that their dad's dead and they're all alone now, they'd be pretty upset.
I don't know. His dad seemed to be a pretty hardened type dude. And, we really don't know how he was raised. And so I think that makes it a little murky with trying to predict that. But anyways, so we get that small little section there, and then it fast forwards to approaching the 10th Hunger Games. So this is like 13 years later, technically, because it was 3 years before the first one. So 3 plus 10, 13 years. He's an adult. It's what you see in our pictures. This is about that time during his life. And basically, he is graduating from school, and the top student is supposed to get a large sum of money. And come to find out that that's not the case this year. Instead, what they decided was there's going to be one final assignment, and the top people in the school are going to be the mentors to the people that have to participate in the Hunger Games because they're losing viewership. The viewership on the Hunger Games is down, and so they're trying to figure out how can we spice it up a little bit. And so they're throwing these individuals in there to try to help the games out. And so, they all get assigned to their different people that are supposed to be in the games. Snow gets assigned to Lucy Gray. And so she is from District 12. She is, we kind of get an idea that she's a bit of a rebel from when she, does her little, I wouldn't say an acceptance speech because nobody wants to accept being in the Hunger Games. But when you have to do your little speech for being selected, she puts a snake down a girl's back that she doesn't like. And she also sings a song that's supposed to be somewhat rebellious. And then she does like a bow for her performance. And we can even kind of tell from her bow that she's a little bit of a smart aleck in a way. It's trying to mock the games with the way that she was bowing. So we kind of get the idea of what's going on there, that, you know, she's probably going to be trouble down the road. So eventually she does meet Snow. He goes to, you know, meet her when the train is, you know, dropping off all the people that are gathered for the games. And then they're like transported to a truck, and he hops in the truck when he's not supposed to. He's trying to, you know, meet this person that he's responsible for. And he wants to, you know, be on the same page with them and make sure that they win. He's trying to be the best that he can be, even if it has to push some of the boundaries of the rules. And so he hops in the truck with them, and they are dumped into a zoo. I guess the way that they're trying to allow people to come and see the people before the game start is that they are basically quote unquote animals behind bars. And so people can come and check them out, see them before the games even start. Do you happen to want to pick up here?
Sure. So one of the things that we know about Snow around this time frame is that he is still very, even though he lives in the capital, he's still very, very poor, and his family has hardly any food, whereas all of his peers at school, they don't necessarily need the scholarship nearly as bad as he does because they're all pretty rich. One of his friends in school is I guess he's like the president's son, so to speak. He's like the head top honcho, right? So, where do we go from here? We get a lot of interactions between Snow and Lucy, and him trying to get to know her and trying to gain her trust. There's at one point where, you know, she's like, if you could do one thing, bring me some foods. He manages to bring her some food, and we see that one of the other mentors is like taunting the Hunger Games player that she had been assigned, trying to like get her to really reach for this glass bottle of drink. And she finally is able to grab a hold of it, and she stabs the mentor. She breaks the bottle and stabs the mentor in the throat because what else does she have to lose? You know, she's stuck in the Hunger Games, and this other lady's just making her seem like it's all a joke. So trying to prove a point there. We get some interactions with our actual Hunger Games announcer and kind of seeing where he came from, and that I guess he started as like a weatherman and magician. It's kind of like a weird little subplot before, you know, the Hunger Games that we know from previous films. The day before the actual Hunger Games, he, meaning Snow, gets to meet with this doctor lady. She's the one with like the big hair and the two-colored eyes. And I guess even though she's not like the president, she's still a very powerful figure and kind of in charge of the games between her and Peter Dinklage's character. I don't know what his character's name was. It's not showing on IMDb. I guess that's how small of a part he must have had.
Dang, that's sad because he's a super popular dude. I'll look it up.
I guess I hadn't clicked on all cast. I'll let you look it up while I keep going.
Oh, but he should be in the top cast. There's tons of people here that he's way more popular than.
This person that played Respectable Man is on the top cast, and Peter Dinklage is not. So, yeah, it's kind of weird.
He played Dean Casca Highbottom.
Ah, okay. So he was the dean. That makes sense. Like the dean of the school. But anyway, so what?
I said they did him dirty.
Yeah, they really did. Especially because two of the top cast members are the ones who played them when they're little kids as young Snow and young Tigris, and they're in the movie for all of like 5 minutes.
Right.
But okay, anyway. So Snow meets with the doctor lady, and he kind of learns about these like colorful snakes that she has because he's coming up with this plan about how to make the games like more of a spectacle and wanting people to get to know the Hunger Games players and trying to gain viewership and whatnot. And we find these colorful snakes that I guess they will attack you unless they've gotten used to your scent first. So I'm just gonna breeze past that because there's so many little details I could go into here. But I'm trying to stick to kind of like the main points.
Well, that's what I kind of liked about this movie is that there's like these very subtle things. Like, so he's trying to, like Sarah said, trying to make this like proposal to make the games better, involving, getting to know the people, potentially betting on, who's gonna win, being able to send in resources that, based on donations, people can, provide for the people that they want to win. But he writes this all out on a piece of paper and he has it sent to the doctor. And so when he goes to meet with the doctor, he also has his classmate with him that was his lab partner or something along those lines in school.
Something like that.
They were close friends, I would say. But when they arrive, she tries to take the credit for what Snow wrote and sent to the doctor. And so the doctor says, "Oh, well, I dropped the note in this tank of snakes, and they happen to like the people that they're used to their scent. So if you're the one that wrote that, you'll be okay. Grab it." And so she reaches her hand in there, knowing she didn't write it. And right before she's about to grab that piece of paper, she gets bit by the snake, and she kind of goes into some convulsions, like on the ground. And they have a medic come up and inject her with something to see if they can make her okay. And this is part of her character development, the doctor, that I kind of liked, because I was like, dang, that's kind of mischievous, because he was like, is she going to be okay? And she was like, well, some of the best parts of science is not knowing. And so we'll find out if that serum works, kind of a thing. We don't know. So they just have a trial right there that to see if the antidote that they have, or the cure for their type of venom that they have, is curable. And so she knows that Snow was the one that did it, and they, proceed with most. I don't think they went with all his suggestions, but at least most of them to be put in addition to the games to spice it up a little bit.
I think the next thing is the bombing.
Yeah, so they bring all the people, to all the mentors and all of the people that are participating in the games, to the arena. And when they're looking around, basically a bombing happens from the rebels, and they blow up the arena, and they're all trying to get away. Some of the people that are supposed to be participating in the games are trying to run away and get away, and I think they shot them, didn't they?
They shot who they could find. One managed to get away and was kind of like lost, and they were hunting for him. And so when the games actually start, like the next day, I guess by that time they had found him and put him on display so that he could be killed by the people in the games. But that bombing scene was one that really bothered me because when the bombing happened, they focused so much on Lucy and Snow that you couldn't see anybody else in the background. It was as if they were there all by themselves, even though there was at least 20 other people around them. And then they did all these bombings, and you see all the walls cave in, and the roof is gone, and like the building's basically rubble. But then when they go to the actual games, the walls are fine, the roof is fine. There's a little bit of rubble in the middle of the floor, but like barely anything, and only like 12 hours had passed. It seemed so non-plausible.
Sarah has no faith in the cleaning crew. They're terrible at their job.
Well, it's not just the cleaning crew. It's you magically built all these walls and stuff and the ceiling and all back over again.
Well, they didn't destroy it so that it was completely gone. I mean, it was a huge building and they had what seemed to be pretty small bombs. So I get that there was a whole bunch of them that went off, but with that building being as big as it was, I can't imagine it would take out the whole thing.
I guess my point was they made it go from this huge bombing, everything's caving in, the walls are half missing, to the next day, everything's fine. There's just a little pile of rubble in the middle of the floor, and that's it.
Mm.
It didn't match. It didn't match for me.
I think the majority of what was going on with this scene was that uh there was a lot of like sand and dust in the air, so it was super hard to see anything. And I think they were able to hide most of what was going on around them with that so that they could focus with them. Like if you're in a sandstorm, granted, I've never been in one, but I've seen from like film that you can hardly see in front of you because the stuff is so bad. So it made me wonder if maybe some of that dusting was so bad that that's why we were kind of focusing on the two characters. Because we did.
I feel like that's what they were trying to do, but you could see the background, like the wall that was 100 feet behind them.
I don't know. Um,
I don't want to focus too much on this, but this was one of the major parts of the movie that really bothered me.
Before the game started, there was something that happened in between, this bombing and when the game started, and that is that Snow went back to the arena and he was scoping out some of the surroundings, and he found that there was a little uh, place to go down and like into the basement area for people to, do hide, run, duke it out, whatever down there. But basically, he went and searched out what would be the good places for her to hide if necessary. And so he goes back to her at night to tell her about this. And he also slips her something. He slips her, I don't know, is that like was it like a makeup?
Compact mirror.
Compact mirror, and he put some poison in it. He noticed that there was a dead rat on the floor at home, and so he took some of that poison that was used for the rat and put it in this thing and said, hey, use it wisely. Don't breathe it. Don't eat it. Don't do anything. Just, if you need it, use it on somebody else. Which is cheating. They weren't supposed to bring things into the game. But she does take that with her. They do have the games like the other Hunger Games where they all have to like stand in a certain spot and they say ready, set, go, and then things take off. A couple people die right away in the games. But what ends up happening is one of the groups, kind of bands together and then they want to take out people, which I mean, these are kids for the most part, and so I can see how they would persuade each other. But me as an adult, I'm like, I ain't trusting any of you people. I don't even care if you say you have my back because eventually you're gonna try to kill me. So I thought that was kind of odd but understandable. Lucy does get away. She runs away into the area that Snow told her to. And so she's able to hide in there for a little bit. She hides with one of her friends. I forget what his name is. But he was actually bit like on the neck when they were transferring over to the zoo area. He was bit by a bat. And so this does play a big part later. Because when they're hiding away, he's trying to stay awake as best as he can. And so he doesn't really trust Lucy, even though she's being very trustworthy. Honestly, she's not trying to use that stuff that Snow gave to her on him at all. She's even trying to give him some water that's there, and he thinks that she did something to it. But basically, what ends up happening is later on, he feels a little messed up and he's blaming her for it when really it was the rabies from the bat bite on his neck. He gets all foamy at the mouth. And during this process, he is chasing her. And so she runs back into the arena and she's, up on some of the rocks from the rubble. And we learn one of Snow's new strategies here. He's like, you know what? things that have rabies don't like water. And I didn't really understand this too much just because I don't know anything about rabies. But he has the person that is responsible for this guy send water to him just so that they can stop, because they're trying to not have people kill each other, even though in the end they're gonna have to. So she sends water, and the way that they're sending these supplies is by using old war drones. They try to rewire them so that they can, recognize who they're supposed to go to with face recognition, and they're gonna go in there and deliver the goods. Well, they send out the water, and the water is sent to this guy, but the drones don't really work super well, and they just bash into him instead of, going up to him, letting him grab the water, and then they fly away peacefully. It was like a wrecking ball when they came through here, because it hit him, he fell off the rock, landed on his back, and died. So essentially, if you think about it, his mentor actually killed him. And then our main character, Lucy, she was able to get away from this instance, but she hasn't gotten away from the people that banded together that are trying to search her out. So she still has the issues with them. She does get surrounded by them, and Snow decides, well, I'm going to send in like 8 of these water bottles to see if, some of these drones will hit these people that are surrounding her. And it does work to a point. What's interesting is some of the water containers seem to shatter because they're in glass. Some of them don't. Just depends on, if they're hitting people or not. But she gets away. She runs away. She takes one of the bottles of water with her as she goes to hide from the group. The group is very upset about this, that she got away. And so even though she wants to drink the water, being Lucy, she's thinking about, well, what if I put some of this, stuff that Snow gave me in the water? That way, if they drink it, well, then they'll die. So she slips some of that in there. She goes back. The group is distracted because somebody else is out there in the arena. I don't know her name, don't know where she's from, but she has an axe. And they're all ganging up on her. And while they're doing that, they're not paying attention to the water. So Lucy goes up to the water, puts the one up there that she put the stuff in, and then she's emptying out the other water bottles so that they focus on the one and try to drink the one. Well, they see her, and she runs away again. She goes into basically a vent, and they can't get in there, the other people, because she got in there, locked it, and now there's that barrier. That group is trying to hunt her still. They're trying to have people go around and try to find her in the vent on the other side. So one person will be next to her in the vent, like on the other side of the vent, so they can try to stab through to make her wiggle a little bit so they can hear where she's at. But eventually what happens is that she, while in the vent, slips some of that powdery stuff through the airways, and it affects one of them, and they die. The other one is able to stab up and break the vent, and she falls through. Trying to remember how she got away from this one. Oh, she just runs to the center of the arena, just trying to get away from them all. And in the mix of running away from the last couple that are still alive, a big helicopter, I don't know if it's a helicopter technically, but it's a big flying machine, very much like a helicopter, brings in.
The poisoned water, somebody else winds up drinking. So it wasn't for nothing, but it wasn't for the intended people, aren't the ones who wound up drinking it.
Right. So we see this big helicopter bring in a massive cylinder, which we as the audience know exactly what that is, because we see while Snow is recognizing the different things that may be happening in this arena, he realizes that they are transporting the big snake tank from the doctor. And so he goes over there, and he had wiped away Lucy's tears one time when they were talking at the zoo, and he rubbed it all over this napkin looking thing, a handkerchief, and slipped it into the snake tank so that they would recognize her smell. So when they deliver this tank and it bursts open, the snakes kill everybody in their way except Lucy. And people take note that the snakes aren't actually attacking her. And they're wondering what the heck is going on. And so Snow is like, yo, she's the last one alive because the snakes killed everybody else. Let her
He's
go.
trying to say that they didn't kill her because she was singing, but we know that's not the case.
Right. They're saying let her go. She's the winner. And the doctor is like not wanting this to happen. I think she's like really contemplating what in the world? Why are my snakes not killing everybody? But she eventually gives in because the studio audience there is like, let her go, let her go. And eventually she does. However, when Snow is about to, go and reap in the rewards for what's going on, he sees on the table the mirror that he gave Lucy and the handkerchief, and they found out that he cheated. And so this is the end.
Help if that handkerchief had his initials on it.
Right. And the dean points that out. He's like, yo, you're so stupid that you had your initials on the handkerchief. So this is like the end of that first half of the film that I was talking about in the non-spoiler section. Up until this point, everything was firing on all cylinders. I'm taking a moment to pause to talk about some of the movie here. This part, up until this point in the film was very much, let's get some character development, crazy twist. Let's get some character development, crazy twist. And I would say the twists weren't super predictable either. Like when he was first seeing Lucy at the zoo and giving her food, and then the incident with the bottle happened. I didn't see that coming. I thought that was a great twist. But basically, the people in the movie have to be on their toes, and us as the audience are very much on our toes too. Trying to see what's going to happen next. It kind of seems like when the film is too quiet, it ramps up pretty quickly. So I wanted to go ahead and explain some of that there. The second half.
I was going to say, I would agree with you that the first half or this first chunk was better than the second half or chunk. I felt like it made more sense than the second part. The story was easier to follow, and the reasoning behind their actions made more sense to me.
Yeah, I would agree. That's why I said I feel like the first hour and a half was way more of a cohesive film than the last hour, which in my opinion slowed it way down. But the second part of this movie, because he cheated, he is being outed to he was supposed to go to District 8, I believe, or District 2? District 8.
8.
He was supposed to go to 8, but he slipped the lady some money, so she switched it to 12. He wanted to go to 12 because he knew that's where Lucy would be. At least that's where he hoped. He didn't know if she was dead or not.
Well, his punishment is that he has to be a peacekeeper for the next 20 years. So basically a soldier.
Right. And so he goes out there, he gets some training. His friend is going out there too, the friend that we were talking about earlier. And so while he's out here, he's, on his free time, he's going to what I would probably call the local bar or local tavern. And he notices that Lucy is performing there. She's a singer, so she's part of the band. And so he's like, great, I found who I'm supposed to find, because they had that connection. Not only was he the mentor, but they kind of had that mentor, it's not teacher-student relationship, but it's got that kind of vibe, in my opinion. So yeah, he recognized that she's there. Things are looking great. However, his friend is doing some weird stuff on the side. He seems to be conspiring with some of the rebellion people. And so he's piecing together, essentially throwing his friend under the bus. Because, if he gets in trouble, like he being Snow. If Snow gets in trouble, well, then he might get hanged for treason because of the way that all, siding with the rebels. And if you're associated with them, well, then you're going to get the punishment as being one of them, kind of a thing. So he's always watching his back. I was going to say the rest of the movie pretty much is the rebel group ends up, or Snow ends up watching where his friend goes, finds out.
There's a lot of drama between the rebel group and Snow, and trying to, he had told his friend you should go there and maybe become like a medic or something, and that you'll be able to help people. But then when he is there and trying to help people, Snow, like, for whatever reason, kind of changed his mind and is kind of like backing away from that decision and wanting more peace and justice and not wanting to cause any trouble, because he still keeps talking about wanting to go back home to, help his like cousin and his grandma, because they're very, very poor, and he still wants to help them. I feel like he's torn between wanting Lucy as like a girlfriend, but yet at the same time wanting to abandon her and go back home to the capital, even though he knows that that's not where she wants to be. They have some fun out in the woods, kind of like Katniss did in the original films, out away from like civilization, where they're not under the eye of the military, so they're able to just kind of be themselves without having to be watched, so to speak. There's an incident where the president of the district, their daughter, who is the girl that
Mayor.
Oh, the mayor, excuse me. So the mayor's daughter winds up getting killed, and it's the same girl that Lucy had put the snake down her dress at the reaping. So Lucy's obviously one of the main suspects, and so they're trying to figure out how people got these guns and how did she get killed and whatnot. We find out that the military friend that Snow has from like the academy, he winds up getting hanged because of some treason speak that Snow had actually recorded on one of those like recording birds. So in essence, Snow is responsible for his friend's death because he turned him in for being a rebel. And then we get some weird stuff going on, because Snow and Lucy essentially run away together, and it seems like they're going to start a new life, but neither one seems like they can really trust the other, and they're being really weird about it. She says they're in their cabin and he finds the guns, and I guess that's where they had hid them, out in the middle of nowhere. She says she's going to go dig up some Katniss, which they had talked earlier in the movie about what that was, and the only reason why I'm bringing it up now is because Katniss is one of the main characters from the original movies and books. So it's kind of somewhat of a Easter egg, if you will. To me, it made me wonder if like this was going to be her mom or something when she was a kid. But we don't really get any of those types of answers as far as how Katniss is related to any of these characters, if she is at all. But he goes out to find her and hide these guns. She's nowhere around, which is kind of weird, because she just said she was going to go dig up these plants. He had given her his mother's shawl a little bit earlier in their journey out there, and so he finds it thinking like, oh, this must lead to her. And when he goes to pick it up, a snake jumps out and bites him. I don't know if it's from the venom or what, but he goes a little crazy when he finds her footprints, and like he hears the I think they called them jabberjays, the birds that repeat the sounds. And so like he starts shooting at the birds. He tries shooting at her because he sees her running away, and he doesn't catch her. He can. Do you know what happens from here?
He goes back to the where he was stationed, because they said that he is like super smart for his group, and he's like, well, the other people are so dumb they can't even read. And so they want him to be promoted and, you know, work his way up in the government. And so he is to be sent to District 2. But they changed it on him because they had other ideas for what they wanted him to do. And what ends up happening is he gets reassigned to the doctor. And so he is going to be working with the doctor moving forward. And the last little bit,
I think she gets him like a full pardon.
yeah, and he's supposed to be going to the academy too. Because, like, in the very beginning of the film, the whole point of him getting a bunch of this money is that he could go to college essentially at one of the most prestigious places. And so now that he didn't have any money, you know, he had to find a way to do that. He had mentioned earlier in the film, if I don't get the money, I'll pay for it another way. And come to find out that he actually ended up getting basically sponsored to get his schooling done. And then he goes back to meet with the dean because he takes the belongings of his friend to the dean so that the dean can take the belongings to that dude's parents. But what we find out here is that the games were actually Snow's dad's, partially his idea. They were talking together, him and the dean, about doing these games, and then it sounded like Snow's dad tried to take all the credit. Is that what you gathered too?
Not necessarily. The dean came up with the idea when he was drunk, and he was really good friends with Snow's dad, and so they kind of came up with it together. But when the dean sobered up, he really hated the idea, but everybody else loved it, and so it became like a thing. So even though it was the dean's idea, he's still pretty ashamed of it, not necessarily like all gung-ho for it. But the dean and Snow have been like not on the same page kind of this whole movie. You can tell that the dean really doesn't like Snow. So that's why he gives them his friend's belongings, because part of it was morphine, which he knew that the dean was essentially addicted to, and we find out now that it's because he's trying to be so high on the morphine that way he doesn't remember the horribleness that he is responsible for, being the games. But what he doesn't know when he takes that morphine is that it's been poisoned, and we know that because he's got the little like bloody nose happening and collapses on the table. So it was poisoned.
Yep. And then the ending of the movie is just having Snow look at the signature statue in the middle of the city. I don't remember if there is a different statue in the other movies, like if they changed it to being him, but that's kind of my guess.
I don't remember either.
So that's pretty much the movie. The one.
I was gonna say another thing that makes us think that Lucy could be related to Katniss somehow or some way is that we hear her singing the Hanging Tree song that Katniss sings in her movies.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Something tells me that she's not the mom because I looked up the mom and she's like a blonde girl and stuff. But
They have very different personalities and looks.
Maybe she's like a family friend or something. Not 100% sure.
Age-wise, she could potentially be a grandmother.
Could be. Let's see, what was Baird?
Think of the age difference between Snow and Katniss in the main movies. There's a good like 50 years between them.
They have to be because I mean Snow gets old and grayed by the time Katniss is up there.
Yeah.
So I think my biggest problem is that you know in the movie the doctor says something along the lines of, do you understand why we have the games, Snow? And then he says like victory or something like that. I still don't understand why they do the Hunger Games. I feel like it's this event that me as the audience member is supposed to accept that it's part of their society and then just deal with it. I don't understand the logic.
It's marketed and it's very much propaganda towards looking like this. It's supposed to be a punishment to the districts for having a war against the capital. You had a war for us. You and all your future generations are going to pay for it because we're here to protect you. So that's why we're going to take your children and remind you basically that we're in charge. What he says at the end of the movie, because it's kind of like at the beginning of the movie, that's what he said, and then at the end of the movie, he changes his answer as to what the games are. And what he says towards the end, I think, is that essentially they are to remind us that when you're, and I'm going to paraphrase here, when you're pinned against a corner and you have no other choices, we're all animals inside, and we will do whatever it takes in order to survive, even if it's really ugly. And we see that because at one point, Snow has to save his. This is a part that we kind of skipped over when we were doing our summary earlier. His friend was really upset about the games, even though he's a student in the academy and he's not part of, like, he's not in the games. He winds up bribing his way to go in there because he's sad for one of his childhood friends who is in the games, who's dead, so he's trying to pay his respects to him. And Snow goes in there to try to get the school friend out of there, and in doing so, he has to kill one of the Hunger Games contestants because it's either that or Snow's dead. So even though Snow's not really a murderer and he doesn't want to participate in this kind of stuff, it was either that or die. And so I think that's what they're trying to get at the end of the film, is that the games are really just to remind everybody that even though we're trying to convince people to care about them because they're people, at the same time, we're all animals and we all do crazy things when we have to. I don't know. A lot of this movie is kind of confusing for me from a motivational standpoint. What's motivating these characters to do these things? That part I understand, but Snow, I don't feel like he was very believable. And I guess in some part, maybe it's on the actor for that, but I feel like a lot of it's more from the director and the script writing and kind of glazing over things and having these sudden changes of hearts without a whole lot of reason as to why. And so that's kind of what bugged me about it.
I think the answer to that is what you said a second ago, with when you're backed into the corner, you'll do what you need to do to survive, and that's exactly what he did. Because when he got caught for cheating and he had to leave, he knew that with his friend meddling with the rebels, that if he was any way connected to it, that he'd get hanged too. So what did he do? He basically ratted him out. That way it didn't get, back to him. I mean, we mentioned that the mayor's daughter was murdered. We didn't mention that it was Snow that shot her, but then he basically made sure everybody else, that except for Lucy, was killed. I mean, when he saw the dude that was also the other guy that was there being taken to go get hanged, he didn't say anything.
Well, I mean, we ended the movie with Lucy being just mysteriously missing and nobody knowing where she is. So there was several parts in the movie where he had multiple options, and to me his back wasn't really pressed against the wall, and he still made, to me, the wrong choice morally, and I don't know. I guess you could say it's a personal opinion, but I didn't really like his character.
I don't know. I'm curious. So when I was saying earlier that I think there's going to be more movies, they did not end this where he was president. So I'm thinking there's got to be other movies that are going to lead up. Well, not only that, but we don't see the connection between the arena and what they use for the Hunger Games later on. So I'm curious to see how that ends up being developed. It's interesting because I'm looking forward to more of seeing the political aspects that play out in the potential future of these films. It was kind of like
Go ahead.
I was gonna say it was like a very similar process with Star Wars back then with the prequels, because how did this empire come, to rise of power through all these ranks? How does Snow do it? How has he eventually become the leader that he is in the other movies? And so I'm curious to see how that all plays out.
To me, I don't want any more movies from this franchise. I feel like they had an opportunity and they kind of blew it. Uh, in terms of how does the arena get to that, I feel, and don't take this the wrong way, but I feel like that's just simple technology advancements. I don't know that there's really a whole lot to make a movie out of that. And with Snow, he's the doctor's assistant or like right-hand man. It seems pretty, and he's got the what is the president? His friend was the son of the president, and the president loves him so much that that's why he got the scholarship. I mean, he's like the golden boy at this point.
Yeah, I would say so. He's got a lot lined up for him, and we're just gonna have to wait and see if they end up expanding on that. I mean, Lucy has a lot of dirt on him. There could be a lot of crazy politics that end up happening here if she comes forward. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But that was our discussion of the latest Hunger Games film. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way you are notified when more of our movie discussions drop. We got tons more coming. There's a handful even coming this coming week. So we look forward to sharing our thoughts on Thanksgiving and Wish with all of you. Drop us a like if you liked the video, and drop us a comment letting us know your thoughts on the latest Hunger Games movies. And if you have insight from the book that would help some of our thoughts on the movie or give us some more substance there, I would love to hear it in the comments. So let us know. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.